but I'm going to go into some talking points that I have that I'm sure will be familiar to all of you since the town has suffered to listen to me for 6 years talk about some of these things. We continue to have a framework for our budget that I've always termed a taxation system here that can be and is volatile, meaning while the economy is booming and if earned income taxes are going up, we beat our projections on most given years. When things happen that are outside our control, the economy sours or people are laid off, or as we have now with rising interest rates on mortgages and a decreased supply, we have revenue projections beyond our control oftentimes that will fall below our expectations. And from the perspective of managing money on a year-to-year basis, that can become increasingly difficult when you're trying to project needs, personnel requirements, capital needs requirements during these times. When Micah was talking about earned income taxes and non-resident earned income taxes, part of that's outside of our control as well. People might be getting 3% increases and we'll present that for an EIT, but there are things such as high wage earners that move from our town that would diminish the bottom line. A business that employs lots of non-residents who would be contributing an EIT to our town that may move. Remember, if you have a business with, let's say, 10 employees that happen to live in a town without an EIT, that suddenly leave that job, and then they hire new employees from neighboring towns that do have an EIT, even though that business never closed, the township would see diminished collections from non-resident EIT. The amount that you see in that budget for non-resident EIT this year, which is, I think we put in like 1.9 million or so to 2 million. On a year-to-year basis, what you'll see is the amount that I would say is generally the buffer that you have in there is $1 million, meaning that about $1 million of the two typically comes from people who live in New Jersey, that we would not necessarily be subject to the enactment of an EIT in a neighboring town like we saw in Bensalem or Middletown suddenly taking that money away. So I would generally argue of the 2 million, $1 million or so would be safe, not perfectly safe, but safe from a tax enactment of a neighboring municipality of losing that money. But $1 million amounts to almost 3 mils in our budget. So it is a significant threat that sort of hangs over the township, I think, that you all need to be cognizant of. The area this year where we're seeing that we've been impacted is in real estate transfer taxes. Just for those of you watching or listening, every real estate transaction has a 2% wage tax. 1% goes to the state, 0.5% goes to the school district, and we get the other half. We had been seeing over the last several years that transfer tax number escalate to where we were in the 900,000s. We were over 1 million 2 years ago. This year's year-to-date number, including, you'll see on the front page of the report that Micah gave you, this year's number after 9 months is $568,000. Now, if you look at the previous years, 15, 16, and 17 I drew on, you can see on that front page where we were in previous years. Last year at this time, we were at 735,000. In 2016, at this time of year, we were at 792,000. So then if I take what we averaged for the last 3 months of the last several years, that average would come out to anywhere between $71,000 and $75,000. Well, we're averaging, it tends to be 10% less the last 3 months than the first 9 months of the year. So if I take that our average is $63,000 a month this year, and we're to come in the last 3 months, as you know, less people buy houses, people don't like to move when their kids are in school, weather's not as good. If we assume that the collections will trend the same way, 10% less per month, that'll come out to a year-end average of $741,775. Now, we budgeted significantly more than that. And it's led me to have a budget number for 2019 of $800,000. I'm not sure that there's conditions that I've seen out there that would suggest that number should be higher than that. 30-year mortgage rates have ticked to 5%. The supply is down. I know that there's some housing projects that the township could possibly see next year, but I would not recommend budgeting as if all of those things would take place. Micah had talked about the fund balance numbers, and he talked about how last year we estimated we would end the year with a little over $3.1 million, that we ended the year with $3.1 million, and we projected about $2.9 million. It's not a big miss. I mean, we were pretty close to the number, but I think what we've tried to do the last half a dozen years is always end up on that side of the curve, that we do a little bit better. So that's where that number is.